Hello everyone, my name is Yihun Stith. I'm a senior columnist for the Cornell Daily Sun. Today I'm joined by someone many of you may recognize, a figure who barely needs an introduction, but deserves one, Curtis Sliwa. Mr. Sliwa is a born and raised New Yorker who, in his 20s, founded the Guardian Angels during a period of high crime in the city. The organization has since grown into an international volunteer network focused on safer and more compassionate communities, doing actions ranging from homeless outreach and youth mentorship to self-defense training and unarmed neighborhood patrols. Furthermore, for nearly 30 years, he hosted one of New York's most recognizable radio talk shows, and his decades-long activism eventually led him to run for New York City Mayor as the Republican nominee in 2021 and 2025. Welcome to Ithaca, and welcome to Cornell, Mr. Sliwa.
Oh, my pleasure.
So as I said, I think all of our viewers will know your recent endeavors in the New York City mayoral politics. So I want to get started by discussing your earlier career. You founded the Guardian Angels in your 20s during a large crime wave in New York City. And you had a clip go viral from the debate where you said that this led you to being shot in the back of a yellow cab in 1992 by the Gaudis and the Gambinos. We're only a few years away from the organization's 50th anniversary. How do you reflect on your time as a Guardian Angel?
Well, first off, the committee wanted to bring me up in a yellow cab, and I refused. Already been shot 5 times, if you didn't already know, back in the yellow cab. But it was 47 years ago, on February 13th, that we began our first official patrols of the New York City subway system, at a time in which there were no cops patrolling the trains at night. And for anybody who's listening or watching me now, say, well, I wasn't even born then. Well, most folks wouldn't be. Like, you go to the period classic cult movie called The Warriors, all about gangs, to give you a pretty good idea of the problems that we were facing when we ventured, unarmed, volunteers, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, teenagers, into the subway system to try to protect the passengers. And immediately finding out that our biggest adversaries weren't just the gangs and the normal criminals. It was the mayor who was opposed to us, it was the police unions who wanted to have us arrested, which they did often. Anything to deter what we were doing. And it all came about from the fact that, well, if government isn't going to provide public safety, that's the number one responsibility of government, then we the people would have to step up and do that. And it was a good 13 years, baptism in fire, because the very people we were trying to help in many instances were our biggest impediment. And then once we were officially recognized, then we became a worldwide organization.
14 countries, by the way. So I want to talk about, you mentioned the city and you mentioned the mayor. So your first campaign for New York City mayor was in 2021. I want to understand why you initially considered running. What did you see in the city that made you feel the need to make electoral politics your next step instead of the activism that you were doing before?
Well, the outgoing mayor was all the incentive that I needed. That was Bill de Blasio, best known for smoking Maui Wowie and Hindu Kush on the back porch of Gracie Mansion every night, and always being late. I mean, the guy was late for his own wedding. This guy was just $1 short and a day late on everything, and I said, the city has really crumbled as a result of the lockdown and pandemic. Then we had the summer of George Floyd, the demonstrations, some of which led to riots and looting. And the Democrat who survived the primary process was Eric Adams, somebody I had known for over 40 years. And I had said in the debates to the general public, this guy will be corrupt and we will have chaos. And boy, everybody's patting me on the back so hard that I need to get a chiropractic adjustment now, because everybody's, you were so right. Yeah, but you didn't vote for me, you voted for Eric Adams, who should have ended up going to jail for political corruption and been in the same federal jail cell as Goldbar Bobby Menendez, the senator from New Jersey. But the long arm of Donald Trump spared him, and he's continuing to commit crime, even though he's no longer mayor of the city. He sells this thing called a crime coin, aka Bitcoin, and rips off investors. So he's always been this kind of a character. I warned everybody, and then obviously I was able to run again in a much, much more highlighted campaign that the whole world was watching.
I was watching it. So I actually want to get some input. So since taking office, Democratic Socialist and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani has faced strong opposition from Republicans and right-leaning groups. For example, prior to Mamdani's election, Donald Trump publicly called him a 100% communist lunatic and a total nutjob. We're about 2 months into Mamdani's administration. What's your assessment of his tenure so far?
We got played. Why would you believe Donald Trump? This guy had a love fest with the guys in White House twice. I love you, like Barney, like a cartoon Barney. I love you. You love me. You never trust politicians. I don't care who they are, Republicans. You never trust them. They play you. And I remember one of the initial interventions I had to do against Republicans and others was warn everybody, stop attacking this guy's Zohran, his religion, his culture. That's all they were doing was piling on, attacking the religion, attacking the culture. I said, attack his positions, that's fine, that's part of political discourse. But stop attacking him for the religion that he adheres to and the culture that he follows. And boy, I just spoke hard. I said, what does his religion and culture have to do with this? You're turning yourself into Islamophobes. And if anything, you're almost lifting him into the office of the mayor, because most people are going to object to that. And I was proven correct on that.
So I want to talk policy a little bit. If you had a chance to sit down directly with Mamdani right now, what's the first policy this would?
First thing I'd be telling him, hey, don't be glazing me, Zohran, here. Because, you know, he loves to do that. The few times we've met, he loves to glaze me. I said, no glazing, animal welfare. My wife and I are involved in rescuing cats and other animals, like a lot of other people that are part of rescue groups. And our city has never been known as being animal friendly. And I would say to the mayor, hey, look, you got a lot to deal with in the city of New York. You know, you're finding out quickly it's a lot more difficult to run the government than to run for office. You focus on that. Let me and my wife bring together volunteers from all over the city so we can rescue cats and dogs and have no-kill shelters. And it's not going to cost you any money. We'll do it voluntarily. That would be my conversation with him, because everything else, look, we differ on a lot of our political, ideological points of view. But I don't look at him as he's evil. You know, he's sort of like the evil C of the Ayatollah from Iran. These people are out of their minds. He happens to be our first Muslim mayor. There are many Muslim mayors and elected officials. There are many Muslims who serve in the military, in law enforcement, Americans, law-abiding. We are vilifying an entire group of people. And it's unfortunate that I hear a lot of that when people come up to me and talk to me about the new mayor of the city of New York that I lost to fair and square.
Well, I hope one day you guys can have that conversation. Mentioning current events, I want to start with immigration. You've held a strong stance against undocumented immigration. Recently, the Trump administration's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, detained a Columbia University student who was later released due to a phone call and help from Zohran Mamdani. What is your reaction to Trump's tactics to enforce immigration law in New York City?
Well, in the beginning, when he revived that, because remember, under Joe Biden, Mayorkas, and Harris, it was pretty much dormant, put on the shelf. It was an easy pass at the border. Anyone could get in. And some people were given a docket number. They were put on parole. They were coming in the legal way, and eventually to show up in court and to have their day in court and make their plea before an immigration judge to see if they could stay or they wouldn't have to go. And then all of a sudden, this guy, Stephen Miller, who I hate, I loathe, I despise, decided that he would impose a quota on ICE agents, who at first were going after the really bad operators, drug dealers, narco-terrorists, sex traffickers, people who were creating problems for their own community and everyone else. And people would applaud them when they were being snatched up, but they hide in the shadows, they're bad people. Then once Stephen Miller decided 3,000 arrests a day nationally, ICE agents getting pressured, started going to Home Depots, back to restaurants, to the courthouses, where people were legally coming to answer their parole so they could make their plea before federal judges, and they're being snatched up. And all of a sudden, put in a gulag in El Salvador. The Christino was like so excited. I wish we could put all of our prisoners in a gulag. That woman should have been fired. But anyway, the point is, you went from public acceptance to what happened in Minneapolis, which was an absolute disgrace. Killing 2 Americans and then referring to them as domestic terrorists. And now look, Republicans, midterm elections, ain't looking too good, is it? The country is rebelling against that kind of totalitarianism, which was not what ICE was supposed to do when it was first created after the attack in 9/11.
Sticking on current events, I want to shift briefly to foreign policy. This past weekend, Israel and the United States launched a large-scale attack on Iran, also leading to the death of the Ayatollah. What is your reaction to the events conspiring so far, and are you in support of them?
I haven't yet figured out why we felt it was incumbent to attack Iran and assassinate all their leaders. Because every day I hear a different story. First, it's an imminent threat to Iran. Where was Iran an imminent threat to Iran? Then the other night I hear Rubio say, well, we had to do it because, Bibi was going to send in the Israeli Air Force first and we would catch collateral damage, so we had to join. Since when do we do what Israel wants? No, Israel will do what we tell them to do. And then I hear the president, he's all over the map. He hasn't come up with a rational reason why we decided to launch an all-out attack with Israel against Iran. Iran posed no threat to us, no imminent threat. But again, I've seen this all through my history. A lot older than the students and even some of the professors point out. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution, when LBJ looked right in that camera, I was just a little young man. We have to send more troops into Vietnam. Why? Some PT boats attacked our Navy in the Gulf of Tonkin. It proved to be a total made-up lie, because presidents have lied to us universally. That's why I always say, challenge authority, question, never accept what they tell you, because most times it's lies. And when Richard Nixon, I was at the White House, I was getting an award, Newspaper Boy of the Year. I would dare ask him a question. You said you would end the Vietnam War. This was like 1971. Instead, we had the secret war in Cambodia and Laos, and they threw me out. The poor guy who had to escort me there was thinking I'm going to lose my mortgage. I worked for the Daily News. I was part of the anti-war movement at that time. Again, we knew that Nixon was lying to us. They were all lying to us. So, we're still looking for the weapons of mass destruction. Dick Cheney, or whether you went up there, I doubt, or whether you went straight below without asbestos. So we're still looking for those weapons of mass destruction. Do not believe your government. Question authority, because they will lie, and if we let them lie, they'll continue to lie.
So we're going to shift back to you right now.
Yeah.
We're now almost half a year removed from the last mayoral election. You've never been someone who stays quiet for long. What's the next fight, project, endeavor that you feel compelled to take on?
Well, I think it's incumbent upon we, the guardian angels in New York City, it's our 47th anniversary, to do what we've consistently done, taking care of the homeless and the emotionally disturbed. Zohran Mamdani got off to a very slow start. It's below freezing weather. You know that up here in Cornell, you need 3 pairs of winter underwear, and you're still freezing. And he got stubborn and said, no, if it's sub-zero freezing weather, we're not going to forcibly remove. Homeless people who are emotionally disturbed were out. 18 of them died from exposure. We've been out there every day, every night, as we always are. So continue the mission of showing what you can do outside of government. Because government is always going to promise everything, no matter who is elected to be in charge. And they're going to be a dollar short and a day late, and everyone gets disappointed in them and angry at them, and I choose not to like it. People do. Go out there, and there are so many things you can do on your own and not have to be dependent on government. Because then you feel like you're fulfilling a mission. Whereas if you have to sit on the sidelines and watch these politicians try to figure out what to do, you're going to be very disappointed most of the time.
I will say, Mr. Sliwa, I think you really caught the attention of Generation Z. And it's going to be mainly college-age students watching this. And many of us are worried about whether it's war or it's AI, their future. Do you have anything that you want to say to the younger generation as someone that has fought for so long?
Let's rename them the Gen Z Nation. Like that? The Gen Z Nation. Now, they had no idea before the election who Curtis Sliwa was. Who's this guy walking around with this red beret? Yeah, if you were my age group, baby boomers, some millennials, but generally Gen Zs were like, what is this guy? And then they listened, and they recognized, wait a second, this guy talks our language. He's very consistent, he questions everything. Yeah, he was a Republican in the race, but most of his adversaries were Republicans themselves, starting with Donald Trump, Elon Musk, the masters of the universe, the billionaires, the millionaires, the influencers, the insiders, all of them, oofa to all of you. Because I said from day one person, one vote. If the people of New York City chose Zohran Mamdani, we all need to support him, because if Zohran does well, we all do well. Why would you wish harm to a new incoming mayor? Now, if he messes up, you give him like 6 months, about Memorial Day, then you can start being constructively critical of what he's doing. But let the guy get an opportunity to put his people in place. Remember, he's inheriting these corrupt Eric Adams cronies, which I'm telling you, having dealt with them, that's a nightmare in and of itself. So I think the Gen Z is appreciating that. And they appreciated the fact that I could be self-deprecating, which almost none of these other politicians are. You know, first of all, they'll never admit when they're wrong, they never apologize, they're always omnipotent, they know everything. And when you actually find out, when you get to know these people, they're insecure, they're erotic. This is what attracts them to politics. And if you're going to follow in the wake of Donald Trump, you know, the I and me guy, it's sort of like, hey, Donald, you know, you attacked Biden for lining his pockets with Hunter with all that money. Man, you're really setting a new way of enriching yourselves at our taxpayers' expense with Bitcoin, which is crime coin, with all kinds of investments. Why are we enriching your family when we have so much to do on the home front? You know, remember America First? Remember, did he forget that? America First. Remember that? No wars. No, that's why I like you sort of in that first term. You didn't get us into wars. Now, you don't know a war you don't want to get us into. And that is not what the Americans voted for in this recent election. Can you imagine if he voted against, if he ran against Harris? He said, we're going to get into wars. Yeah, Venezuela, Iran, one by one. I think we bombed 7 countries by now, and he ain't stopping. We should have figured that out. You go to Cornell. I never, you know, I went to high school. But when they changed their name from the Department of Defense to the Department of War, we should have figured out with Pete Hegseth in charge. These folks meant what they renamed themselves to do, which is to go to war and seize oil. That's all it's about, taking oil. Because with oil, you control the world. That's what it is.
I must say thank you for speaking truth to power. I have one last request.
Go.
If you can look down the barrel of that camera, we have a saying called Go Big Red. You can just say Go Big Red into it. It'd be great.
Oh, this is so nice because remember, Red Beret. Go Big Red!
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Got
It's been great. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay.